When you think of a flood, what's the first image that comes to mind? Probably submerged streets, cars floating like toys, and water creeping up the sides of houses. That's the picture we all see on the news. But what if I told you that's just the opening scene of a much larger, much more terrifying story? A devastating flood is rarely just a single disaster. It's the first domino to fall in a long, catastrophic chain reaction, a chain reaction being amplified every single day by our warming planet. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and uncover the hidden consequences of flooding. We'll explore how one disaster can trigger a whole cascade of others, creating a crisis that lasts long after the water is gone. Let's start with what happens right after the flood hits. Those floodwaters aren't just water. They're a toxic soup, a disgusting mixture of chemicals from industrial sites, raw sewage from overwhelmed treatment plants, and all kinds of debris. This contaminated sludge doesn't just sit on the surface. It seeps deep into the soil and our groundwater, poisoning the very sources of our drinking water for months, sometimes even years. Imagine turning on your kitchen tap and not knowing if the water is safe to drink, to cook with, or to even wash your hands. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's the harsh reality for countless communities in the aftermath of a major flood. This leads directly to a public health emergency. We see outbreaks of nasty waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid fever. At the same time, local hospitals are already struggling to treat injuries from the flood itself. Now, they're completely overwhelmed, creating a secondary health disaster that puts everyone at risk. But the chain reaction doesn't stop there. Let's talk about something we all need every single day: food. When floodwaters cover huge areas of agricultural land, they do a lot more than just drown the current season's crops. The salt, chemicals, and pollutants left behind can poison the soil, making it infertile for years to come. This triggers massive crop failures, which leads to food shortages and skyrocketing prices. And this isn't just a local problem. It affects entire regions, even entire countries, that depend on that food source. Farmers can lose their entire livelihood in the blink of an eye. Communities face the very real threat of food insecurity, and in the most severe cases, famine. It's a quiet, slow-burning crisis that unfolds long after the media has moved on to the next story. Now, here's a connection you might not expect. How can a massive flood actually lead to a wildfire? It sounds completely backward, right? Water should stop fire, but it's all about the domino effect on the ecosystem. Massive floods can kill enormous areas of forests and other vegetation. Just picture it. Once the water finally recedes, what's left behind? A landscape filled with millions of dead, dry trees, shrubs, and plants. This dead material is the perfect fuel. It's like leaving a giant pile of kindling spread across thousands of acres. So when the next dry season or heat wave comes along, we know those are also becoming more frequent and tense. Because of climate change, these flood-ravaged areas are primed to ignite. A single spark can set off an inferno. We're witnessing this dangerous cycle of flood-then-fire play out in places all around the world. It's a devastating 1-2 punch from nature that leaves ecosystems and communities reeling. Let's consider the impact on our infrastructure. This is another critical link in the chain. Floods don't just damage homes. They compromise the very skeleton of our society: our bridges, roads, power grids, and communication networks. Think about it. A single washed-out bridge can completely isolate a town, cutting people off from emergency services, food shipments, and medical supplies. A damaged power plant can plunge an entire region into darkness for weeks, disrupting everything from hospital operations to our ability to work and communicate. The cost to repair and rebuild is astronomical. It places a huge economic burden on communities and governments, diverting billions of dollars that could have been used for schools, healthcare, or other essential services. This economic strain isn't a short-term problem. It can cripple a region's economy for a decade or more, long after the physical scars have started to heal. And what about the natural world? The domino effect is absolutely brutal for wildlife and ecosystems. When floodwaters filled with urban pollution and agricultural runoff pour into our rivers and oceans, they create what scientists call dead zones. Here's how it happens. The excess nutrients from fertilizers in the water trigger massive algae blooms. You've probably seen pictures of lakes and coastlines turned bright green. When all that algae dies, it decomposes, and that process sucks all the oxygen out of the water. This suffocates fish, crabs, and any other marine life. Entire aquatic ecosystems can collapse. Meanwhile, on land, habitats are completely destroyed and wildlife is displaced. Animals are forced to flee into new areas, often leading to increased conflicts with humans as they desperately search for food and shelter. It's a silent slaughter that happens beneath the surface and in our forests. This brings us to the most important element of all, the human element. The social consequences of these cascading disasters are profound and heartbreaking. The immense stress and trauma of surviving a flood, of losing your home, your job, your cherished possessions, or even a loved one, can lead to severe and long-lasting mental health challenges in the months and years following a major flood. Communities see sharp spikes in anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And these impacts are not felt equally. It's almost always the most vulnerable populations, the elderly, low-income families, and marginalized communities who are hit the hardest. They often have the fewest resources to rebuild their lives, which only deepens the existing social inequalities. The disaster after the disaster. So, as you can see, a flood is never just a flood. It is a trigger. It's the start of a complex, interconnected web of cascading disasters, where each one makes the next one even worse. It contaminates our water, threatens our food supply, fuels wildfires, cripples our infrastructure, and devastates both our natural ecosystems and our own mental well-being. This is the reality of climate change. It's not just about isolated incidents we see on TV. It's about a global system that is being pushed into overdrive, where one extreme event sets off a chain reaction with far-reaching and devastating consequences that ripple across our entire society. Understanding this domino effect is the first, most critical step. It helps us see the full picture and allows us to start building more resilient communities. It forces us to demand meaningful action to address the root cause of it all. We need to move beyond simply reacting to disasters and start proactively building a world that can withstand the chain reactions our changing climate is unleashing upon us. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful and it made you think, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into how our world is changing. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let us know what other climate connections you'd like us to explore. Stay safe and stay informed.